Hey guys, I decided that I am going to start doing videos about One Piece because I love One Piece. It is fantastic. So this time is going to be chapter 1059, which was an emotional roller coaster, and I have not been this stressed reading a chapter in a very long time, but it was great. So let's talk about it. Okay, let's start with the cover story. Germa 66's Cold-Blooded Voyage, Volume 18, The Effects of Caesar's Hallucinogenic Gas. Here is my lovely rendition of this panel, because I don't want to put screenshots just in case copyright stuff. Pretty straightforward. We know Caesar's an evil mad genius who creates all types of gases and weapons, so he obviously turned himself into this hallucinogenic gas, which shouldn't really be surprising at this point because we've seen him turn himself into different kinds of gases, like the one in Punk Hazard that kind of made people not able to breathe. So obviously we wouldn't see Katakuri and Oven duking it out if it wasn't for the situation, but it's pretty straightforward, so let's move on to the next stuff. So chapter 1059 starts out with this scene between the red-haired pirates and Marco. We find out that Marco actually hitched a ride from the red-haired pirates from Wano back to Sphinx Island. And Shanks is like joking around with Marco, trying to get him to join his crew again, just like he did when he went to go meet with Whitebeard about Teach back before the Paramount War. And like, honestly, this is kind of rude. Like, you're trying to poach a dead guy's captain. Like, come on now. But I think it's just a joke. Like, I don't think Shanks is actually serious at this point, because he knows Marco doesn't really want to do the whole pirate thing anymore, and this was just kind of a favor because of Ace and Izo. What I think is kind of funny about this, though, is that Marco is like joking around about how he's old, and you guys who are the great pirates, go out and do your thing. I'm gonna go back to Sphinx Island, be a retired old guy. And it's like, Marco, you're like 45. You're like around the same age as Shanks, and even some of Shanks' crew members are older than Marco, but like, I get it. He's emotionally tired. He's worn out. He's had his career. He's had his pirating adventures, and now he just wants to kind of memorialize Whitebeard and live up to, you know, the guardian role of Sphinx Island. It's kind of nice to see Marco get brought back here, because this is where we saw him talking with Nekomamashi before Wano started, and where he got recruited, and now he's getting returned, which probably means that he's gonna not be in the story again for a bit, if at all, because his role has kind of been fulfilled now. I think this is almost confirmation that Marco is not going to come back in till the end of the story, because I think if Luffy was going to visit Ace's grave before the end of the story, he would have done it now. So I think that means Luffy's definitely not going to Sphinx, and that I think realistically, Luffy at the end of the story will probably see a scene of him visiting Ace's grave and maybe talking with Marco, or just like a panel of them looking at the grave together, because like otherwise, why wouldn't he have just gone now? You know what I mean? And moving on, we have a flashback scene in Wano before the Straw Hats set sail. So we start out with this scene between Luffy and Yamato, and I think this scene was so necessary, and I'm so glad Oda put it in, because it gives us the context that we were missing when we initially found out that Yamato was not going to be a Straw Hat. Or at least, like, right now. Yamato is saying to Luffy that, you know, I know you probably know this already, but that forest guy, which is a much better name for Aramaki, I love that he's being referred to as that forest guy, was only driven off because of the immense haki that person sent before, which is Shanks, but Yamato doesn't know that, and it doesn't really matter for this conversation, right? And the reality that Aramaki was right. You know, Kaido, although Kaido was treating Wano horribly and that the people were pretty much enslaved, they were at least protected from the outside world. And now that Kaido is gone, Wano is definitely very vulnerable, which, although Momonosuke is really 8 in a 28-year-old's body, he even kind of realized that breaking down the walls of Wano would make Wano very vulnerable, especially with, there not being this strong force. Yes, Luffy absolutely is super strong and wants to protect Wano, but the reality is that just because his flag is there, that doesn't mean that pirates aren't going to come. We as the readers know that Luffy is super strong and that he's Joy Boy and has this crazy strong devil fruit, but the reality is that there are gonna be pirates that are maybe new starting out pirates just hitting the new world, or even pirates that have been around for a while that didn't want to touch Wano because of Kaido are now gonna be like, I know this kid Mugiwara no Luffy is supposed to be an emperor now, a Yonko, but he's some kid, right? He doesn't actually have a bunch of territory, he doesn't have the kind of reputation that Big Mom had, that Kaido had, and, having everybody who was protecting Wano, besides the Scabbards, leave, makes Wano super vulnerable, and yeah, we saw exactly how much Scabbards could protect Wano. Yeah, they're super strong warriors, but in the grand scheme of pirates, they could easily get outmatched, right? So Yamato is saying, as much as I want to join the Straw Hats, man, I really want to be a crewmate, that's what I want, I so desperately want to join your crew, but I can't really abandon this country, right? I'm supposed to be Odin, and Odin wouldn't abandon this country, and I can't really abandon it. You understand that, right? And Luffy's like, you know what? Yeah, it would be a load off of my mind, because Luffy can't stay behind and protect Wano. And I'm sure if Yamato went off with him, and he knew he took all of the strong people protecting Wano with him, he would be kind of worrying in the back of his mind about Wano. So although Yamato isn't going to join, we get an answer as to why that happened. And then we kind of pan to see the rest of the Straw Hats and kind of what they're feeling about this. And Zoro especially points out, Momo has a lot of pride, you don't want to hurt his pride, because he's finally starting to feel strong, he's finally starting to take up this role of Shogun. If you just say, hey, I'm staying behind because you're weak, it's not gonna feel so great, and it's gonna be a huge blow to his confidence, which he really doesn't need right now. He's got so much on his plate. So Yamato's like, yeah, no, I'll find a reason. I'll think of something so that Momo doesn't, feel, super insecure or whatever. I'll think of something. And ultimately we know that Yamato says that he needs to explore all of Wano just like Odin did before he can go set sail. And now we know, of course, that that's just kind of a cover story so that Momo doesn't feel bad about making Yamato stay behind and miss out on his adventure. Which I think is super sweet and just a really wholesome moment. And the next part of this flashback scene is another moment that I really liked, that I thought was a nice kind of, not an ending, but just a callback to Paramount War and seeing the scene between Jinbei, Luffy, and Marco, and him saying okay, see ya, Luffy, I'm gonna go hitch a ride, and I'm sure Luffy knows that it's Shanks, but even if he doesn't, I don't think they're ready to meet anyway. I think we need to see a little bit more happen in the story. But Luffy finally addresses Marco for saving his life back in the Paramount War, and we kind of see a panel of when he says to Jinbei to take Ace's brother and leave, and Luffy says, you saved me, I just want to say thank you. And then Marco and Jinbei are having a cute little moment talking about how they were trying so hard and everybody was rushing in and trying to get in on the action and help save Ace. And then Marco kind of leaves Luffy off with this cute little I'm sure Ace would be proud of you and be proud of like who you've become and everything. And then we get Luffy's little happy laughter, and it's just really sweet. I also really like this moment because it kind of demonstrates how much growth has happened between Luffy and Jinbei and kind of how the relationship has changed a lot. Back when the Paramount War happened, I think a part of Jinbei knew that one day Luffy would be a great man and that he would eventually come to be a crewmate for him. And I think that was something that Jinbei kind of knew in that moment, but he knew that Luffy had lost everything. Not everything, but like he lost his older brother, and that was devastating because he literally died in his arms, and he had to watch it happen after everything he went through, after going through the different hells and impelled down, and literally giving up 10 years of his life to try to save his brother, and all of the suffering that happened, all of the crazy, wild, like, rallying that had to happen in that moment for everything to just not work out. And that was kind of like Luffy's lowest point, and now we kind of see Luffy's highest point, right? And again, it's this moment with Jinbei where, and Marco was there too, and you know, we see that Luffy is now a Yonko, and now he has Jinbei as his crewmate, and it's kind of fulfilling almost that promise that Luffy and Jinbei made to each other. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really nice. I really love that kind of stuff, and I'm glad that we got to send Marco off and got an actual explanation about the Yamato thing, because I just don't think it would have made sense for us to continue and not really get a real explanation, you know? Now we move back to the present, and we are at Amazon Lily, and it looks terrible. We can see just from the panel, even before we get to the flashback telling us what happened, like the arches that cover Amazon Lily, half of it's cut up. There's clearly been a lot of fighting, clearly been a lot of wars and battles and everything that Hancock's been having to do, because we knew from the Reverie that Koby was supposed to be the one going to go catch her, so we knew at the very least that he at some point had been there, if not was still fighting there. And Gloriosa says that this is the first time in the history of Amazon Lily that men have invaded like this, so that means Empress after Empress after Empress after Empress was protecting Amazon Lily, and they never had to worry about people invading like this. But because the warlord system got destroyed and dismantled, now everybody's coming for them, and so this is the first time that, other than that Reverie panel that we saw, or a couple of panels, that we've really gotten to spend some time with Hancock since, like, the very beginning of the time skip, when she drops Luffy off. So we got some catching up to do, right? And so Hancock then says after that because she's still here, the Navy's not going to stop coming, because she's no longer protected by the warlord system. They want to bring her in. Like, she is clearly a very dangerous pirate. Even before everything that happened, they threw her into the warlord system with a bounty of only 80 million. Like, they didn't want her bounty to go up because they knew she was a threat. They did that with a lot of the warlords, I feel like, because I think that they did that kind of stuff because they don't want these people getting that much notoriety and having no control over them. I think they figured getting these warlords early when their bounties were still somewhat low in the grand scheme of things, because now that we've moved forward and we've seen, like, Crocodile, what his bounty is, Mihawk, what his bounty is, like, clearly the warlords are people that are very dangerous and threatening to the world government and the Marines, and I think that they wanted to get them all super early before the bounties went up, also kind of to keep the warlords themselves from thinking too highly of themselves, probably. But yeah, so she says that, and then she's like, I guess I'd better go marry Luffy. And, like, obviously it's Hancock, and we know she has a giant crush on Luffy. but I don't think marriage necessarily, but I do think that allying and maybe folding into the Grand Fleet might be an option, or at least having her wave the Straw Hat flag on Amazon Lily might be an option, because that'll at least scare off some people. But I mean, the issue is the Navy, so I don't know how much that would help, because he's a pirate and they're after her regardless. But it really does kind of make me think, like, where can she go at this point? Because she would have to abandon her entire country, and I would assume that the other members of the Kuja pirates would probably have targets on their head at this point, but I guess if they weren't given bounties because of Hancock's, leniency because she was a warlord, I guess maybe they would be safe and maybe only she would have to leave, but I honestly, I don't know. Like, there's not really anywhere for her to go. Like, she could try to meet up with Luffy and hop on his ship, but that's not going to necessarily keep her safe, because he's going to have a run-in with the world government at some point, but at least it's better than getting constantly bombarded. At least she would be on the run, but I don't know. And then we also see here in this panel that she's got bandages all over her, so that means she's been fighting. And now we're going back in time again a few weeks prior. There's a lot of time movement happening in this chapter just to fill in a lot of the gaps. I have a feeling that's probably going to happen a lot for the next couple chapters as Oda fills us in on everything that's been happening all over the world, because there's a bunch of other warlords we need to get to. We need to eventually get to Sabo's deal. We need to find out what happened with Vivi. All of that. So as we're going into this flashback, we see that the Kuja pirates and the Marines are fighting, and it's probably wave after wave after wave, just like Mihawk was dealing with before he joined Cross Guild, right? So we see one of the Marine guys talking about deploying the new pacifistas. The Seraphims should be on the front line, so some kind of new weapon. This must be what Issa was talking about when he was trying to get the warlord system dismantled. So we're going to find out what the answer to that was. And immediately in the next couple panels, we see this new weapon, the Seraphim. And we see that the Kuja pirates are struggling because, one, this weapon is even stronger than the pacifista, which we'll get into in a second, and two, the new weapon is in the form of a child, so they don't know it's a robot because they're an Amazon Lily. They don't really know all the deals out with the outside world because most of them don't leave the island, right? Because Hancock does that for them. So we can see initially right away, we don't get to see the face right away, but we can see that the pupils are in the shape of stars, and that we already see the flame on the back and the dark wings. We don't see the hair, but the hair looks from the shading as probably light, but we don't see the skin. But we see that it's in the form of a child, it's shooting some kind of beam out of its hands, and it has some of the traits of the Lunarians, right? The flames on the back and the wings. And if things weren't already crazy enough with this new weapon getting unleashed, next thing we know, the seas are cracking, we hear zee-ha-ha-ha, and there's a sea quake because, lo and behold, Blackbeard, or Marshall D. Teach, the Yonko, has shown up, bursting through with Whitebeard's old power that he stole from his dead body like a psycho, and he comes in and says, "Zee-ha-ha, I have come for the Pirate Empress," which means he was actually looking for Boa Hancock's power. So I thought it was going to be some kind of a weapon, or I don't know. I didn't expect him to be coming for Hancock. I really don't know what I thought he was looking for, but I definitely didn't think he was looking for her. And we see with him, he has brought two of his captains, Katarina Devan and Vasco Shah. So he has two of his captains, and then he himself came. That's how important this is. And he says like he doesn't want a power like hers to fall into the Navy's clutches, which means that he thinks that this power of hers is super, super, super important, and that it's crazy strong, which it is. It definitely is, but it's just like one that I didn't think he would want, just like with Absalom's power, the clear fruit. I didn't think he would want that one because honestly, that one's not that, I don't know, I don't think that one's that great because, like, with hockey, wouldn't you be able to sense somebody's presence even if they're invisible? Like, if your hockey is trained pretty well, you should be able to sense somebody, I would imagine. Like, I can't imagine that it obliterates your presence too, you know what I mean? But here he is, showing up at Amazon Lily for Hancock, and this is where I started getting super stressed and panicked, because I love Hancock, and I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen here? I am stressed. So then we get Katarina Devon saying that Hancock is what a gorgeous face, and how she wants to use her head to make a trophy, which is pretty much what we expect from the prisoners from Impel Down that were erased from history, pretty much. You know, really nice people. And then Vasco Shaw is saying how, oh, don't you think we could have a little more fun with her if we took her alive, which is creepy and gross, and now I have branded Vasco Shaw a frickin' creep. So, okay. And now we see one of the Marines on the ship calling in, Vice Admiral, we need you to give the order for us to engage Blackbeard, and he's saying don't fire, don't engage until we hear from HQ. I think it's interesting because somebody had to give that order pretty high up for a Vice Admiral to have to okay it, because I don't remember it being like this before. People would just engage with pirates if they happen to see them, but either like the Garsai or Akainu or somebody high up made some kind of a decision that they need to be more careful with certain pirates, or with pirates in general, because of maybe all the stuff that's happening in Wano, or happened in Wano, or the Reverie. I don't really know, but I just think it's kind of interesting that they're being more cautious now. And now we get confirmation that Koby did make it to Amazon Lily to try to capture Hancock. Now, it kind of seems to me like Koby was not in the initial wave of pirates that went after her. It seems like there were waves and waves and waves of pirates, and now Koby's here to try to get her, because it seems like he's just starting to try to reason with her. And then he talks about how he's not surprised that there are pirates that are trying to get pieces of the former warlords, which I wonder if the Cross Guild was already made at this point, or if they were just kind of suspecting some of the warlords to ally, or some of the Yonko to try to grab up some of the warlords. And Koby is trying to, like, reason with Hancock. He's like, Hancock, son, the Navy isn't looking to fight. If you surrender, we can leave right now. I guess he means, like, I'll get you away from Blackbeard. And I don't know. And it kind of seems like Koby just got here and is trying to resolve this without making the people of the country suffer necessarily. That kind of seems to be what his take on this is. But I kind of agree with Hancock's sister, and when they're like, this hero of theirs sure is conceited, because honestly, like, Koby is really strong now, but he's not strong enough to beat Teach. He's not strong enough to beat Hancock. Like, those are two crazy powerhouses, and the fact that he thinks he could protect her from him is kind of like, Koby boy, like, come on. And of course Hancock is not going to entertain this, and says she's never going to be someone's captive again, obviously referring to her time when she was a slave. And she just does not want to live like that. She refuses. She's not gonna do this. She's not gonna go down easily, you know. And and her sisters warn her to not do it. And then, before we come back to that, we see something kind of sus. So right after this, we see Teach's men, "Commodore Teach, save us!" And there's like this huge explosion, and then Teach, his entire expression changes. Like, we usually see Teach kind of being cocky and full of himself and really arrogant, but he's like, wait, you're kidding. White hair, brown skin, and black wings, and immediately we get that confirmation that the PX, whatever they are, the new pacifistas, the Seraphim, are Lunarians, or at least have Lunarian DNA, which kind of makes me believe that they're alive, because we know that Vegapunk messed around with the lineage factor, and that's how they were able to make the pacifistas that were like Kuma, and that was how the artificial devil fruit that Momonosuke ate was able to be created. And this one looks an awful lot like Dracul Mihawk. If you remember back in one of the SBSs when Oda drew the different warlords as children, he drew Mihawks, and I tried to draw it over that and recreate that pose using what we saw in the manga, and I tried to color it as best I could. So this is my attempt of the comparison between the Dracul Mihawk we saw in the SBS when he was a kid versus this little Seraphim pacifista little dude. And you can see that the features are like identical, which means that at some point all of the warlords had their DNA extracted, which means we're probably going to see a bunch of warlord pacifistas, which is kind of wild because the warlord system was taken out, but we have little mini warlords running around now, which is absolutely insane and terrifying. But we also see like the flames on the back again, we see the wings again, and Teach says that PX, and we can even see in the panel that there's a little P and part of an X on the chest, which means that these are in fact the new weapons, the new pacifistas that Iso was talking about back in the Reverie, back in Mary Joie, which is crazy. And we know this one at least inherited Mihawk's sword skills because this little pacifista child cut down the entire, like, arch from the Kuja island, which is insane. And Teach is saying, you guys aren't serious, like, this kid took all of you down right before he sees the PX, and he's like, oh my god, it's a pacifista. He's like, damn pacifista brat, and his face is like still kind of like horrified and a little bit scared, but he's kind of still being a little bit arrogant, and he's like just kind of confused too though, because he's like, what is going on? And now this little Mihawk pacifista Seraphim thing is getting right up in his face and fighting him, and he has to use his Logia powers because this is just not going well for him. So then we turn back to Hancock, and she is kicking ass, turning all these dudes to stone, and even Helmeppo gets turned, the Vice Admiral Yamakaji gets turned, and then we see Koby trying to get the pacifista Seraphim to stop, and he's saying, stop, like, you're gonna kill the people who've been turned to stone, you're gonna smash them and break them. And he's like, stop, it's an order. So clearly they're trial running these things, and I know they're recording it. They're trying to get information and data, I'm assuming, so that Vegapunk can modify them where need be. And Hancock is fighting still, and then we turn to the next panel. So before I talk about any of the craziness that is happening on this page, let's talk about the bounties. So we actually get updated bounties for Hancock and for Teach. So Hancock's beautiful, fantastic, amazing, incredible. So the last time Hancock had a bounty that we knew of it was 80 million. Like I said before, I'm pretty sure that the reason why they tried to recruit so many of the warlords when their bounties were still really low was because they wanted to freeze them before the bounties got so high that the world and they themselves were aware of the strength and power, so I think they just wanted to squish that as soon as they possibly could. But a 1.659 billion bounty, which makes sense because Crocodile's new bounty is 1.965 billion, and I think as a figure, maybe not necessarily power level wise, Crocodile definitely poses a greater threat because he's part of the Cross Guild now and he has a lot of really dangerous connections, but Hancock's bounty, nothing to sneeze at. I think that it's probably pretty accurate in terms of the threat she poses. And then we get Teach's, which is 3.996 billion, which is the second highest of the Yonko now, because I think we can call Kaido and Big Mom dead as they fell into a bunch of lava and probably melted until they were just a pile of bones, but who's to say? Let's talk about the panel now. This panel gave me so much stress. I had to put it down for a second and process this because holy crap. So Teach used his Logia to grab Hancock, and because his power kind of negates devil fruits, she can't really do anything because he's got her by the throat and he is a very large man. And she can't really use her hockey and stuff right now because she's being choked to death. So Hancock's like, get your filthy hands off of me, and she's using one of her hands to grip his hand as he's grabbing her, just so that she's not completely gonna die immediately right this second. And if you look in the background of this panel, we see all of the Marines around are turned to stone. All of Blackbeard's men are turned to stone. Even Vasco Shad and Katarina Devon have been turned to stone, and they're standing behind him, turned to stone. And he says, I see they don't call you Empress for nothing. Most of the morons on my crew are petrified. You sure got us good. And then Koby is standing in between them. He doesn't really know what to do because he was not anticipating Teach just showing up trying to take Hancock. And we see that Teach does reveal, I've had my eye on your power for quite a while, which, I don't know, at this point, I don't think anybody in particular has had an interest in her devil fruit besides him. Like, I know Law's devil fruit was worth, like, what, 5 billion berries? That one, we know there's some funny business with that fruit because of the immortality surgery that Law talked about, right? And we know Luffy's fruit is important, and we know the Logias in general are pretty sought after, and the people who have Logias as their devil fruits that are not Marines, their bounties tend to be relatively high, or the government tries to recruit them for warlords like we saw with Ace and Crocodile. But Teach in particular has an interest in this particular fruit. And then Hancock gives us some information about her fruit that I don't know if she's bluffing or if she's serious, because it kind of struck me that she was just given this fruit, like she was given the fruit and forced to eat it by her slave owners, the celestial dragons that, you know, she was sold to. So I don't know if she found this information out later, or who knows, because she's sailed all over the place with the pirates. She could have learned a lot of information about her fruit over time, but she tells us, if you kill me, all of the people that I have just turned, all of your crewmates, all of these Marines, all of these people here, will never be able to change back. Because whoever then eats the fruit, or because it's Blackbeard somehow acquires the power from him, the fruit won't make them able to change people who were already turned to statues back. And she also says my beauty is what makes this power formidable, which is true because she's so beautiful, she's able to weaponize her beauty, which is incredible, and we love her for that, and it's great. And then Koby is thinking, I knew it, Hancock is far trickier than anyone expected. I think he just means that she's strong. I don't think he knew it as in her fruits deal, but who's to say? And now we're seeing an interaction happening between Blackbeard and Koby, which makes me really, really wonder what happened at Rockyport. And he says, seems like we're at a bit of an impasse, doesn't it, hero? You did me a favor at Rockyport, and we know whatever happened at Rockyport kind of led Blackbeard to become the boss of the pirate island, or that island where we saw Absalom go and not come back, and then Gecko Moria probably get killed there as well. And he says that it made it possible for me to oust Ochoku. So I kind of wonder what exactly happened there, because the Rockyport incident also had something to do with Law becoming a warlord. The other thing with this panel that I would just like to point out, that amidst all of this stress and like me really, really worrying for Hancock because the situation is so stressful, if you look in the background of this panel, the one where they're zoomed out and you can see like the piles of all of the people turned to stone, and it's like an itty bitty Blackbeard with an itty bittier Hancock, you can see the giant Luffy picture that she blew up and had put on the palace wall. And I think that's hysterical because it's not the Straw Hat flag, it's just a picture of Luffy. Because she's like, it's Luffy. Which I just think is like at least a nice little thing that kind of offsets this a little bit. And I didn't notice this the first time I read this chapter because I was so stressed watching this all happen. But I just saw it now and it's fantastic. And that makes me so happy because I remember when they said that they were gonna do that and Hancock was like, yes, like I'm gonna put this picture up of Luffy and it's gonna be great, and now we actually get to see this picture of Luffy, and I think that's really funny. So now Blackbeard turns to Koby and says, if I unhand the woman, do you think she's gonna play nice and change everyone back to normal? And Koby says, well, it'd be a headache for me if she didn't restore their Marines. And she's like, I'll do it if both of you two get off of my island. And Teach thinks about it for a second. He's like, you know, I don't really believe you, because if I let you go, I have a feeling you're just gonna turn me to stone. Because, like, come on. You're, like, the hottest woman ever. I mean, he doesn't say that, but, like, I honestly don't think any man can resist your charm. So he's saying, you're the hottest woman ever. Which, like, she is. Come on. And he kind of, like, relaxes his face a little bit, and I think he's like, well, I have 8 more of those captain guys. I guess I'm just gonna have to lose 2 of them, which kind of sucks, but better than me dying. And he's like, well, this is a real head-scratcher, but I guess I'm gonna have to kill you. And Koby, being Koby, I guess is trying to save as many people as possible because he's a Marine that actually values human life. Is like, don't throw all those lives away, like. And then the next panel we see a familiar silhouette, and it's Rayleigh, and he says that he knew the Navy was going to come to this island because the warlord system got dismantled, but he didn't think that it would be this bad and that the island would be literally destroyed, and he apologizes to Hancock for being late. Which is kind of almost like similar to when Shanks showed up at the end of the Paramount War. I think this is kind of supposed to reflect that a little bit, especially because Rayleigh kind of has a very similar aesthetic to Shanks, where he kind of has like funky pants that are not entirely all the way down to his leg, and then has the sword and the like button-up shirt, and Teach is kind of shitting bricks over here and is like Dark King Rayleigh, and his eyes grow all like huge, and they're like, you can see the intensity on his face. He's like, ah shit, ah shit, ah shit. And you gotta love Rayleigh because of what he says next. He's like, Whitebeard's old apprentice. Huh. He doesn't even call him Blackbeard. He doesn't call him Teach. He like throws it in his face. He's like, you were Whitebeard's old apprentice. Like, you don't even matter. Like, I don't even care that you're a Yonko. I don't care that you're like this powerful dude. And then to like add salt to the wound, I know it's immature to admit this, but I really don't like you. And I'm like, yo, same. And Hancock, you can see the blood dripping down her side of her face, out of her mouth. And she's like, Rayleigh! And of course, Rayleigh comes in, and then Koby is like, holy shit, and his eyes are popping out of his head, almost like the cartoony fight we saw with Luffy. And then we see that there are a handful of people that must not have been hit with the beam from Hancock for whatever reason. So there's a couple of them, and they're also freaking out. And Rayleigh gets super serious. He's like, Hancock, release everybody that's been turned to stone. I'm gonna de-escalate this without issue. Which is, again, it's kind of like very parallel to what Shanks did during the Paramount War to kind of wrap the war up. And then he says, like, the invaders will leave this island. I'm not gonna allow anything funny to happen. So again, it's like exactly like what happened with Shanks at the end of the Paramount War. And then we move back to the present day at Amazon Lily. So either Rayleigh or Shockey says that they're so glad you managed to survive that, and Hancock says thanks to you, Rayleigh, and then Shockey says that sometimes progress causes no problems, and that even the comm belt isn't safe anymore with these Vegapunk sea stone paddle ships out there, which means that not only did Vegapunk make all these new human weapon things made from Lunarian lineage factor DNA stuff, he also made a bunch of sea stone paddle ships so they can go right on through the comm belt, so Amazon Lily is no longer safe. And then Gloriosa says, between the Navy's new weapons and Blackbeard's arrival, I thought we were done for. And then we also get the reveal that Shockey was actually the former Empress of Amazon Lily. She was from 2 generations ago, and she was the former captain of the Kuja pirates. So that means that that Empress that Gloriosa had talked about to Hancock, who ran away because she fell in love, was actually Shockey. Which is pretty cool, because we always knew that Shockey had some more stuff going on, but Oda hadn't quite told us what the deal was, whether she was like part of the Rocks pirates, or she had a connection to some other kind of famous pirate crew, but this is where we finally get that confirmation of who she was. So this means that after Hancock, there was somebody in between her and Shockey, and then I would assume that Gloriosa is older than Shockey, but maybe that's backwards and maybe Gloriosa's the one in between Hancock and Shockey, but I doubt that. I wonder if this mystery person, this mystery Empress, now that we've gotten 2 away from Hancock, if we're going to get that answer at some point, and if they're going to be an important character that we've either met or we're going to meet. Don't know, but I kind of wonder. And then we move to Rayleigh saying honestly, like, we were lucky because of my reputation, we were able to get out of there. But I'm old. I probably could not fight against Teach. He would probably win. And Shocky's just kind of like, And Hancock's also like, And Ravy continues on to say that the Navy are trying to replace the 7 Warlords with those new weapons, and then Senator Sonia and Marigold say that even after everything, like, they didn't have a single scratch on them, and that the one that we saw in the beginning, that we really didn't get a good look at the face, looked just like Hancock when she was young. Just like the other one looked like a baby Mihawk. So I tried to recreate as best I could a comparison between the young Hancock we saw in the anime versus this pacifista. And just like the one of Mihawk, we see the white hair, the brown skin, the black wings, and the flame produced from their body on their back. So we see the young little pacifista Seraphim Mihawk and Hancock compared to King, and the resemblance is uncanny. If we look at them compared to King, we see that they have all the same exact features. The little PX on them tells us that at least somewhat robotic, if not almost entirely robotic, plus they have the beam that comes from their hands, just like the pacifistas that we saw that were shaped like Kuma had as well. Now the question is, like, how human are they? How much do they share the traits of the people they were made after? How are these people even cloned? When did this happen? How many people have been cloned? The other thing I kind of wonder is why the Mihawk one has Mihawk's eyes, but the Hancock one has little stars in her eyes. I don't know if each one looks a little bit different. I wonder if they're able to use any of the powers, if any of the people they were cloned from had devil fruits, if that lineage factor got passed along, if the hockey and stuff, like how that got passed along, because clearly the Mihawk can use the sword skills, so I'm like, I really wonder the extent to which all of these things happen. I also think this is probably confirmation that we're going to meet Vegapunk soon, because Oda just gave us more questions without answers. Like, I mean, we got the answer to the question, what is the new weapon? But now we don't know why is the new weapon, right? So I really hope that we will meet Vegapunk soon, because I feel like he's like this character that we've always kind of known about, that we know like literally nothing about. Like, we know he's not necessarily a good guy, but he's not entirely bad. Like, yes, the experimenting, the cloning, the lineage factor stuff, that stuff is a little morally gray, right? But at the same time, like, he let Kuma be programmed to protect the Straw Hat ship. Clearly, he didn't entirely agree with what was happening, so I wonder how much of that is forced and that he doesn't have a choice in, and how much of it is his own curiosity and stuff. But I don't know. This whole chapter was wild. We still have a little bit left, so let's get to the final part of this chapter. Okay, so the final section of this chapter, we see, I'm gonna assume this is a Marine ship and that these are Marines talking to each other. Yes, we'll be docking at Egghead Port soon, regarding the kidnapping of Captain Koby. Captain Koby, the hero of the Rocky Port incident, has been abducted by one of the 4 Emperors, Blackbeard. His current status is unknown. I wonder if Blackbeard took Koby because he's gonna turn Koby into the Cross Guild for the bounty, or if he's using Koby to get to the Cross Guild to come take Crocodile's power. Or if he just wants access to them, right? I don't know why he would kidnap Koby and not just kill him if he wasn't gonna use him as a bargaining chip for something. I really don't know. But Teach, after this chapter, the fact that Teach knows about Lunarians makes me kind of wonder what other information he knows, because Roxty Zabek is like his idol and a model for a lot of the things he does. So I would assume he also has been looking into a lot of the taboo information. So maybe Teach really does have the final road poneglyph? I really don't know. If you have any thoughts you would like to talk about, or if you have any comments about anything I've said, or if you have any ideas or theories, feel free to comment. That's about it for this video. I'm probably going to make more of these because I really like talking about One Piece. So, see ya. Bye.